Hello, and welcome back to Nocturne Library. I'm really glad you're here tonight. And thank you, truly, for making this little corner of the internet part of your nightly routine. A place you come to soften the edges of the day and let yourself drift. I'm Ava Calloway, and tonight I'm reading a beautiful piece by Nora Fielding. If your mind's been busy today, or it's been one of those long, lingering days that doesn't quite know how to end, you're in exactly the right place. Tonight's story is quiet and very close. We're stepping aboard a Venice Simplon sleeper carriage into that softly lit, polished hush of midnight on a moving train, where everything is brass and linen and warm water and careful hands. It's the kind of story that doesn't ask anything of you. You don't need to follow a plot or hold on to details. You just get to sink into the rhythm of the carriage, the gentle sway, the feeling of being looked after as the dark countryside slips by unseen beyond the glass. And if you'd like the story and subscribe, it really does help Nocturne Library keep making these nights for you. Now, let your shoulders drop, unclench your jaw, and take one slow, easy breath. And let's begin. Chapter 1. Midnight in the Blue Corridor. Your fingertips drift just above the polished wood as the carriage gives one long, measured sway, and the deep blue runner underfoot receives your step so completely that even your own movement seems to disappear into it. At the passageway window, the heavy cream curtain is almost fully drawn, leaving only a silver seam at the edge where moonlight catches the glass. Somewhere beyond it are France, or Italy, or one of those unclaimed miles between them where names matter less than motion. Ahead of you, a brass latch, a small amber lamp, and the washroom door waits ahead. You are tired, though not exhausted, by the strain of travel, by the need to keep your ticket, your gloves, your timing, your posture, your awareness, all in their proper places until even your hands feel tense. You do not want anything difficult now. More than that, you do not want to choose. Which is why the corridor asks nothing of you, presenting only one step after another, one lamp after another. The blue runner leads down the corridor. The train moves beneath you with the assurance of something old and well-balanced. Not a jolt, not a stumble. The train sways side to side, and your body adjusts automatically. You keep one hand near the wall, not because you need support exactly, but because the lacquered wood is smooth and faintly warm, and because after a day of deciding where to sit, what to keep near, when to rise, it is a relief to let your attention rest on one simple contact. Behind one compartment door, there is the lightest upholstered creak, then stillness again. Farther away, a footstep is taken and absorbed at once by the runner, leaving only the rail cadence beneath everything. A low, patterned murmur, metal on metal below. The corridor is nearly empty. Paneling, brass, curtained glass, amber light. the occasional padded sound of the train tending to itself as it continues through the dark. You glance again toward the narrow seam of moonlight at the curtain's edge. It gives almost nothing away. No villages, no stations, no fields, only brightness flattened to a line, and the passing suggestion that the world outside is open, cool, and very far from your skin. That is enough. You find you prefer not seeing the route. Somewhere the train is making its way south or east, carrying sleeping passengers through borderless hours. Here in the corridor, you need know only that it is midnight, and that you have reached the part of the journey in which someone else will take charge of comfort. The carriage lamps soften everything. Their amber shades lower the shine of brass, deepen the walnut, turn the cream curtain richer where it folds. Even your own shadow against the paneling is gentled at the edges. You notice, as tired travelers do, details you would ignore earlier in the evening. The narrow join between panels, the small grain swirl in the wood near your hand, the way the gold border of the runner is worn a little flatter down the center, where so many feet have passed in confidence. The train has done this crossing many times. That reassures you. When the attendant comes into your awareness, he seems to have noticed you first. The corridor extends ahead in its amber sequence, and then his dark jacket and exact linen are simply part of that order. His manner is spare in the way that comes from long experience rather than stiffness. He takes in your face, your posture, the small fatigue you have not needed to name, and inclines his head in quiet acknowledgement, as though he has already understood what is required and means to spare you the asking. There is no fuss in him, and no question that would require you to gather yourself up again. He does not ask whether you are certain, or whether the timing suits, or whether you might prefer later. He makes it easy to continue. You are grateful at once for this economy, for the way competence can feel more restful than sympathy. He reaches the washroom door before you do, and lays 2 fingers on the subdued brass latch. You notice the movement because it is so exact. Not hurried, not ceremonious, simply correct. For the briefest moment, nothing happens except that poised contact, brass under his hand, your own step held half a beat behind it. Then the latch turns with a muted click, and the promise of it seems to settle in the air before the door opens inward, and a different register of warmth touches your face. For a moment, you remain where you are, just at the threshold, with the corridor behind and the smaller room ahead. That pause is not indecision. It is the body registering a change in scale. The passageway has been narrow, yes, but it still belongs to the train as a whole, to movement, to transit, to all the compartment doors and sleeping strangers and unseen miles. The washroom, glimpsed now beyond the attendant's shoulder, belongs to another order entirely. Light gathers more closely there. Wood and porcelain replace distance. The train keeps moving, but the room feels separate from it. The attendant stands aside enough for you to enter first. Again, no unnecessary words. His discretion is of the oldest and most useful kind. Not concealment exactly, but the removal of anything superfluous. You realize, with a little inward exhale, that you have trusted him already, and that you trust him because he is competent. He arrived when needed. He opened what should be opened. He left nothing for you to manage. You take the last step along the blue runner toward the door, and the pile gives under your slipper with a thick, cushioned resistance before yielding. At the threshold, there is a narrow strip of polished metal, cooler than the wood around it. And then the floor changes beneath you. Even that small change is felt all the way up through your calves and hips, your travel balance recalibrating to the tighter space. The train sways once more, and here, at the hinge between corridor and washroom, the motion feels closer here. Behind you, the curtained window remains in the passageway, with its silver seam of moonlight. You do not turn to look at it again. The outside has reduced itself to a useful minimum. Distance, darkness, onwardness. France can remain France. Italy can remain Italy. And the unnamed stretches between them can pass as they please. You have no task in relation to them now. The attendant's hand comes to rest briefly against the edge of the open door, not blocking, only steadying it against the carriage's movement. It is another tiny anticipation. Had he not done it, the door might have shifted a fraction on its hinges. Because he does, it remains still for you. Such small corrections begin to add up into a larger feeling. One you have been wanting since sometime after dinner without quite admitting it. That you can stop managing everything. Inside, you catch the first impressions only in passing. The gleam of a beveled mirror, the pale oval of porcelain, the dark shine of lacquered wood made deeper by amber light. You do not need to inspect the room yet. It is enough to feel that it has been prepared, that its dimensions are human and deliberate, that once the door closes, the world will contract to a size your tiredness can finally meet. The attendant waits until you have crossed fully in before he moves. Then, with the same measured hand that turned the latch, he eases the door inward behind you. The brass gives another restrained click, softer this time from within. The corridor is not gone. You can still sense the train beyond the panels, the blue runner outside, the moonlight stitched along the curtain's edge somewhere just there. But the sounds have altered. Rail cadence remains, only rounder now, as if filtered through wood and linen, and the close air of a room lit for one waking passenger at midnight. You stand a moment in that new enclosure and feel some of the tension leaves your shoulders. Not all at once. Travel does not leave the body in a single breath, but enough that your jaw unclenches a little, and the hand that had hovered near the corridor wall no longer needs to search for balance. The attendant inclines his head again, already turning toward the basin and whatever preparations come next. And you understand with a calm, almost too practical to be called pleasure, that for a while you will only need to follow the order he sets. The train continues beneath you, crossing its dark miles under moonlight. And here, in this smaller amber room just off the blue corridor, for a while, you no longer have to manage yourself. Chapter 2. The small lamplit room. Inside, the room is smaller than you expected, and that helps. The corridor, with its blue runner and curtained length, and the suggestion of other compartments beyond polished wood, falls away as soon as the brass latch settles back into place. What remains is lacquer, amber light, and porcelain, each surface near enough to be understood without effort. You do not have to account for miles here. You do not have to picture where the train has reached by now, whether the dark beyond the curtain belongs to France still, or to some later stretch of track. The journey reduces itself to a measured sway under your feet, and a faint rail cadence under that. Regular enough that after a moment you stop distinguishing one from the other. Still, part of you still expects interruption. Wood panels, dark and polished. Take the lamplight and return it in a warmer tone. The beveled mirror catches one amber edge and doubles it, making the room feel slightly deeper. Beneath it, the basin curves up in white porcelain, the narrow brass lip around it already touched by warmth. You notice that before you mean to. Not beauty, but that the porcelain will not feel cold against the backs of your fingers if they stray there. The attendant moves ahead of you by half a step, and no more. He does not fill the room with instruction. He simply begins. One folded square of linen is lifted from a shelf, shaken once to let its creases settle, then laid near the basin, where a hand will find it without searching. Another towel, thicker, monogrammed in a corner you glimpse only when it turns, is placed on the heated press for another minute. The cupboard door closes with a padded click. You catch the faintest trace from within. A faint trace of cologne lingers in the warm linen, then thins into steam, soap, and walnut, until it is almost only the idea of freshness. You stand where you have been placed, one hand briefly on the edge of the counter to feel the train's motion through the wood. It is different here than in the corridor. Out there, the movement passed under each step, asking your balance to answer it. In this narrow room, with the door shut and the lamp low, the sway reaches you filtered through fixtures and paneling, muted by the room. The floor gives a little and returns. Glass taps glass once, and then is still. He turns the taps only part way. Water enters the basin in a controlled stream, not splashing, not hurrying, and the sound changes the room at once. Until then, it has been wood and cloth, and the muted run of wheels far below. Now, there is also this domestic note, so ordinary and so exact that your shoulders lower before you consciously allow them to. As the basin warms, the sound softens. The attendant tests the temperature with his fingers, then adjusts it by almost nothing. He has done this enough times that the movement is scarcely visible. Only a turn at the wrist pause. Another touch to the water. You find yourself watching his hands rather than his face. They are the part of him most fully present here. Dry, assured, attentive to small gradations. A towel is folded in thirds, then rolled once, with the kind of precision that comes from repetition rather than display. He sets it aside where it will be needed later, and because he sets it there, you stop wondering what comes next. What eases you most is that he knows exactly what comes next. Your reflection in the beveled mirror is partial, cut by angle and light into useful fragments. An eye, the line of your cheek, the dark shape of travel clothing at the shoulder. You look less like someone in transit than someone no longer in motion. The amber lamp above the glass has a shade that softens every edge without dimming the practical work of the room. It leaves brass mellow instead of bright. It leaves your own face unexamined. You are grateful for that without needing to think it through. The attendant reaches for another towel and unfolds it lengthwise. With a small inclination of his head, he indicates the collar of your clothing, and you turn slightly to allow him to shield it. For an instant, the linen hovers between his hands, bright in the amber light. Then it settles across the back of your neck and shoulders with a dry, starched weight that immediately begins to warm from your skin. The touch is light, almost formal, yet it lands with surprising force. It is a simple thing, no more than protection against the later water, but it is the first moment in which the care becomes personal, no longer arranged around you, but laid upon you. The day has involved enough deciding and adjusting. To have even your collar considered for you feels disproportionately relieving. Beyond the door, a footstep passes and disappears into the runner. Not silence afterward, exactly. More that the train's own motion resumes its place as the main sound, and everything else arranges itself behind it. The corridor remains just there, a few inches of wood away, but it has already become a different scale of life. The basin is emptied and filled again, this time a little warmer. Steam does not rise in clouds. It merely loosens into the air and leaves a trace on the lower edge of the mirror. The attendant sets out what he will need, with the foresight of someone making sure no wet hand will have to hesitate. Comb near the folded cloth, where it can be taken up at once. Brush beside it, angled so its handle will not catch against the jug. Jug not yet filled, but placed within easy reach. Soap dish opened and turned so that no lid will need managing later. A shallow porcelain dish is set near the corner of the basin before there is anything to place in it, ready for whatever pins or clips will soon be surrendered there. Nothing crowds the narrow counter. You realize that your own tiredness had been prepared to keep track of these things, to note what was missing, to supply it if asked. Instead, there is no gap for vigilance to enter. You breathe in and get polish, warmed porcelain, the faint citrus cologne breath from the cupboard, and under it all, the mineral scent of fresh water. It is not a grand fragrance. It It is the smell of things put in order for the night. The train leans through a long curve, barely enough to shift your weight from one foot to the other. The brass fittings answer with a minute tremor. In the mirror, the lamp's reflection lowers by a fraction and steadies again. You have the passing thought that the carriage is better at this than any land-bound room could be, because it does not insist on stillness. It lets movement continue and simply makes a smaller place inside it. That thought does not need to go any further. It is enough just to feel your body stop preparing for interruption. The attendant opens the linen cupboard once more and removes the warmed towel from the press. Heat leaves it in a pale breath. He does not use it yet. He only transfers it to a drier place, so it will be ready at the correct moment. And the care of that timing reaches you even before the towel itself does. Comfort is being arranged in advance, not improvised after need has already announced itself. You feel, with a kind of practical gratitude, how much easier it is to surrender when each next thing has already been accounted for. He checks the basin again. A little more hot water, then less. The taps close. A single drop follows, then another, then stops. His hand rests for a moment on the brass rim, measuring retained warmth not with ceremony, but with habit. The porcelain gives back enough heat to matter. In a room this size, details at that scale become the whole experience. The brass is not decorative now. It is simply the edge that keeps the warmth gathered where it is useful. You shift your stance and feel the floor answer under your soles. The carriage moving under the carriage. Layers of motion reduced until they become almost companionable. The linen at your shoulders has warmed fully. The air near the basin is a degree softer than by the door. Your hands, which had remained faintly cool from the corridor, are no longer cool. Nothing dramatic has changed. That is part of the relief. The crossing continues. The hour remains midnight. And yet, the part of the night that required your attention has grown smaller and smaller until it fits inside this washroom and can be managed by another pair of hands. In the mirror, the blur of steam at the edge has widened. It leaves the center clear and softens only the margins. The attendant smooths the folded linen once with the flat of his palm and gives the comb a final, slight adjustment beside the brush. The small click of porcelain against the counter. The last alignment of wood and cloth and brass sounds neat and final. Preparation is nearly complete. He steps back just enough to take in the arrangement, not admiring it, only confirming that nothing will require reaching across you once the washing begins. That restraint has its own grace. He does not handle you like a task. The room is being adjusted around your comfort in advance, so that later there will be fewer interruptions, fewer corrections, fewer reminders that care is something assembled by effort. The lamp gives its amber light steadily. The polished wood returns it. The rail rhythm continues under everything. You find that your gaze has lowered from the mirror to the basin, from your own reflection to the useful white curve of porcelain and the folded towel waiting beside it. The change is small, but it is a change. You are less occupied with how you appear in this hour, and more willing to be placed within it. When the attendant turns toward you again, it is with the composed attention of someone for whom the room is now ready. He does not announce the next step. He only lifts a hand toward your hair and waits for your consent. You incline your head almost without deciding to. Outside the door, the blue corridor and its silver seam of moonlight continue on through the carriage. Beyond that, the train keeps crossing its unseen miles. Here, under the amber lamp, among warm porcelain and folded linen, and the faint brightness from the towel press, you feel the room take you fully at last. Chapter 3. Pins, dust, and the first brush strokes. His fingers pause at the first fastening, as though to let your scalp understand what is about to change. Then, with no more ceremony than that, he starts removing the pins. You feel the light touch near your temple first, then behind one ear, where a pin has been carrying more weight than you noticed while you were upright in it. Metal slides free with a tiny, dry sound. Another follows from farther back, and then another, each one released in the same measured way, never jostling, never catching. He does not gather them in his palm all at once. He sets each into a small porcelain dish by the basin. They click softly in the dish. The sound is unexpectedly relieving. It is not conversation, not explanation, only proof that the pins are out. You stand or sit exactly as he has placed you, close enough to the basin to feel a little stored warmth from the porcelain, far enough back that nothing presses. The amber lamp above the beveled mirror leaves no harsh edge anywhere. In the glass, you do not need to study yourself. A suggestion of your shoulder, the line of your cheek, the dark shape of loosened hair beginning to alter around you is enough. You had not wanted to make any more decisions tonight, not even small ones. And here, you do not have to decide where to look, or what to do with your hands, or whether this pin should come first, or that one. The order has already been chosen. Outside the door, the corridor runner takes what little sound there is and keeps it low. Once, a footstep passes somewhere beyond the blue and gold length of it and disappears before it becomes a disturbance. Beneath that, the train continues with its regular undersong. Wheel over rail, rail under wheel. Not loud, only steady, with the carriage giving now and then a long sideward ease that reaches the washroom through the soles of your feet and the back of your knees. Another clip is loosened. Your hair settles by degrees, not all at once, but in sections. Where it has been pinned, the roots feel newly light and slightly tender, aware of air. He supports each section before releasing the next, so there is never that abrupt drag at the scalp that makes the eyes widen. Instead, there is a sequence of small diminishments. Less weight here, less pull there, less shape to maintain. A strand slips against your neck. Another brushes your collar. Before it can become inconvenient, he reaches for the folded linen prepared earlier and arranges it around your shoulders. The cloth is crisp from pressing, with enough body to stay where it is placed. He draws it close to shield the collar at the back and settles the edge near your throat without fuss. Its starch has softened just enough in the room's warmth to feel supportive rather than rigid. You register the practical kindness of it at once. Your collar stays dry, and you can stop thinking about it. The last fastening leaves your hair fully down. He pauses to assess the weight and tangles. You feel the air reach parts of your scalp that have been covered for hours. It is a small sensation, but after compartments and corridors and dining and the composed posture of travel, it feels unexpectedly good. Then the brush comes into use. You hear it before you feel it. The slight lift from the counter, natural bristles meeting his hand, the wooden back making the gentlest contact with linen as he turns it. When it touches the ends of your hair, it does not begin high, where tangles would tighten. It begins where the strands are free, near the very tips, with short, patient strokes that gather and smooth only a little at a time. This is what finally lets you relax. The first passes are light enough to remove what has settled there, without waking resistance in the scalp. The brush lifts the day's dust from the ends. You can feel the difference, not as cleanliness yet, but as lessness, as though the lengths are becoming simpler in his hands. He works from the ends upward, exactly as he should. And your body knows the rightness of it before your mind names it. A lower section is smoothed through until it gives no resistance. Then his hand moves a little higher, one supporting the gathered hair, the other drawing the brush down through what has already been freed. No section is asked to yield too much at once. No stroke starts with a claim it has not prepared for. The train sways, and the brushing falls into the same measure. When the carriage leans, his hand steadies at the back of your head. When the floor rights itself, the next pass begins. The rhythm is so well matched that after a few strokes, you stop distinguishing between motion given by the train and motion given by the brush. Both are carrying something downward and away. In the mirror, the lamp seems lower than it did in the corridor, though perhaps it is only that your eyes have ceased their alert scanning and settled into this smaller field. Brass edge, white basin, the dark sheen of hair, his cuff moving once and then again. A compartment door farther down the car closes into its frame with a muted, upholstered sound. The washroom receives it and lets it pass. When the brush has done what it can at the outer layers, he sets it down and takes up the dressing comb. Its teeth make a different promise. You hear the first fine contact near the ends, a more precise sound than the brush, and feel the comb separate what travel and arrangement have pressed together. Again, he starts low, never at the crown. He lifts a section with one hand and combs with the other, drawing through until the strands align. Then, taking the next small portion, comb finds places the brush has only softened. A tiny knot is worked apart by patience rather than force. You feel the briefest hold, then the release, and then nothing but the downward glide. The lack of tugging is a relief. Here, with each section eased free, you become aware of how many slight holdings had accumulated without your consent. At the scalp, at the jaw, between the shoulders. The jaw loosens first, then the back of the neck. Your shoulders drop a fraction beneath the linen. He changes angle to work behind the ears, where hair often compacts from being pinned and repinned. The comb's teeth are cool at first contact, then warm almost immediately from use. He does not scrape the scalp. He enters the hair cleanly, draws through, lifts away, and repeats. A few loosened strands brush your cheek before being gathered back. The touch is so brief, it barely counts as interruption. Once, he places the comb down and returns to the brush, using it to marry the freed sections together. The natural bristles distribute the hair's own oils from higher up through the lengths, restoring a surface gloss dulled by the day. You feel the brush travel farther now, from mid-length to ends, then from nearer the crown through all that has already been prepared. The strokes lengthen as the work becomes easier. Their sound changes too, from a faint, dry resistance to something more continuous, more even. Another pin, overlooked until the hair shifted, reveals itself near the back. His fingers find it without surprise. The porcelain dish receives one more tiny click. That last small sound pleases you disproportionately. Perhaps because it means there was still one unnoticed demand being made on you, and now there is not. The linen at your collar is adjusted by a finger's width. He has sensed, before you have, where the edge might begin to press. The correction is so exact that it feels less like being rearranged than being spared the need to rearrange yourself. You let your head incline a little more into the support his hand provides when he gathers the heavier lengths to one side. Your scalp follows his guidance without caution now. The brush returns to the crown, but only after everything below it has been made ready. From there, the strokes are broad and unhurried, drawing the full length into order. You feel the roots wake under the bristles, not sharply, just enough to bring circulation back to places that have been fixed in one direction too long. It is a pleasant awakening because it does not ask for anything. The hair falls more naturally after each pass, finding its own weight again. The basin waits with its retained warmth. The silver jug stands ready near the ewer, catching amber light along its curve. The towel on the heated press gathers a little more heat while this earlier work is done. You do not need any of them yet. It is enough to know they are in their places, each step following the last, in an order that does not hurry toward water, but arrives there properly. He parts the hair once with the comb, then smooths it back. Not a style, only a check. His fingers read the thickness at the nape, the places where dampness will later linger longest, the sections that must be fully free before rinsing begins. You can feel that he is preparing not just the present sensation, but the next ones as well. Outside, the curtained window in the passageway gives back only that narrow silver seam at its edge. You imagine, without needing to know, fields gone pale under moonlight. A station lamp somewhere passing unregarded. Perhaps France thinning toward Italy. Or perhaps some other midnight interval with no name attached to it. The route can remain abstract. Here, what matters is the brush in your hair, and the way your breathing has lengthened enough for the lamp's reflection in the mirror to look steadier. He finishes one final series of strokes from crown to ends, each slower than the last, until the lengths fall in a single obedient line down your back and over the linen. No dust remains to be lifted. No hidden fastening remains to be found. He has brushed out the day, strand by strand. Then he sets the brush down beside the comb with a care so familiar it hardly sounds at all. And one hand comes to rest lightly near your hairline, readying the place where warm water will begin. Chapter 4. Warm water at the hairline. Then the hand near your hairline shifts away for only a moment, and you hear the small, unmistakable note of metal lifted from porcelain. You hear him lift the jug. You do not need to see it to know what comes next. By now, you know what comes next. Something is prepared, tested, brought near. Nothing arrives before it is ready. The amber light lies across the lacquered panels and the beveled mirror without glare. The basin beneath you still carries the warmth of the water run into it earlier. The brass lip at its edge, faintly heated where the air above it has been steamed. Behind the door, the corridor continues in blue and gold and midnight. But here, your attention has drawn inward, toward the linen at your shoulders, the rolled towel supporting the nape, your hairline. You realize, just before it happens, that you have been expecting to brace. Not from fear exactly, only from habit. Travel teaches the body to prepare for little shocks. A draft from a station platform, a basin too cold, water that surprises by being hotter than promised. It has lived instead in the slight readiness at the back of your neck, the small lift behind the eyes, the almost invisible way the shoulders keep one thread of effort in reserve. Then you hear the water poured from the warmed ewer into the jug, a close, controlled stream, and after that, a pause. His wrist turns. You do not see it, but you know the action by its timing and by the confidence of what follows. He tests the water against the inside of his wrist before he brings it to you. Not ceremoniously, not as a display of care, but as part of the work itself, as necessary and practiced as setting the brush down with the bristles facing away from the damp. The pause is brief. It tells you more than any reassurance could. The water has been checked. Surprise has been removed. When the first pour comes, it begins at the hairline, exactly where his hand had rested. The stream is narrow, deliberate, and warmer than your skin without overtaking it. touches first at the front, then spreads through the roots in a measured line, and you feel the weight of it gather and travel backward, threading along the scalp before slipping into the lengths. The sensation is immediate and unhurried at once. It finds what has been brushed loose. It enters what has been arranged for it. It carries the day downward in a single direction, from crown toward the waiting basin. The towel supports your neck so well you stop noticing it. Your neck does not have to hold itself against the porcelain edge. The rolled linen fills the hollow there with just enough support that the head can give over another degree of weight. That small surrender changes the rest. The jaw unclenches by a fraction. Even the hands, wherever you have placed them, seem less involved in being awake. He does not pour continuously. That is part of the comfort too. One pass, then a pause. In the pause, water continues its own course, running through the lengths, collecting for a second in the deeper strands before releasing into the basin below. You hear it there as a gentler sound than the tap made, less vertical, more rounded. The train moves under it all with its steady rail cadence, and for a few moments, the two rhythms overlap. Wheel and water, wheel and water. Each one regular enough that your breathing begins to fall into place beside them. Another wrist test, so brief it is almost only a turn of silence. And then the second pour. This time the stream begins slightly higher, near the crown, and broadens as he tips the jug. Warmth travels in a slower sheet, spreading over the top of the head and descending in several paths at once. You feel one line of water move near the temple, another at the back, another through the thickest part of your hair, where the brush had earlier met the last of the dust from the day. None of it is abrupt. Even where the water reaches the scalp most directly, it arrives with the exact temperature that lets you receive it instead of react to it. As the next pour comes, and the next, that anticipation begins to loosen. Not all at once. It eases gradually. The place between your shoulders lowers. The muscles at the base of the skull stop keeping watch. Your forehead smooths without being told to. The train gives one long side-to-side sway, the kind that earlier might have reminded you to steady yourself. And now it merely alters the angle of the water for a moment, before it rights itself and continues on. Somewhere beyond the washroom door, a footstep crosses the corridor runner and disappears into the pile. The brass latch gives a faint answering tick as the carriage shifts. Then again, there is only the interior sound of this work. The pour from jug to hair, the run of water into basin, the discreet movement of linen adjusted at your collar when a drop threatens to stray. He wets the hairline first each time, as though introducing the scalp to what is coming before asking the rest of the hair to follow. The order of it helps. Front, crown, lengths. Pause, test, pour. Nothing imposed, nothing rushed past. The basin holds its brief, stored warmth under your neck and shoulders, and the steam rising from it keeps the air close and temperate. Even the mirror, catching amber light above you, seems less like something to look into than another panel of warmth in the room. By the fourth or fifth pass, you stop counting. The need to mark progress fades. Water continues to travel from root to end, and with each measured jugful, the strands grow heavier, then more uniformly so, until no section remains half dry, half waiting. The difference can be felt even without touching it. The hair no longer resists in separate places, but lies under the water with a single, coherent weight. The attendant reads this through his fingers. You read it through relief. A final dry patch near one temple receives a narrower stream. He has noticed it before you have. That has been true of everything tonight. The linen was there before your neck asked for support. The collar was shielded before a drop could threaten it. The comb found the knot before it became a pull. Now the water reaches the one place still cooler than the rest, and the scalp answers at once, releasing that last small reserve of caution. You feel, with some surprise, how intimate temperature is. Not dramatic heat, not cold enough to shock. Only this exact degree of warmth laid at the hairline again and again until your skin relaxes into it. Warm enough that the pores open. Warm enough that the roots soften. Warm enough that the thought of remaining alert begins to seem unnecessary, almost impractical, like keeping your gloves on in a room where the fire has already done its work. The jug empties. The ewer replenishes it. Metal touches metal with a contained domestic note. Another brief test at the inner wrist. Another pour. The repetition is not monotonous. It is what allows you to go deeper into the same comfort instead of being moved on to a new one. You do not have to learn anything. You do not have to answer. You only feel the water arrive, travel, and leave. And because each pour lands just right, the body stops preparing against the next. The change is plain now. Your breathing has lengthened without instruction. The exhale takes a little more time than it did at the beginning. The space behind the eyes, which travel can keep bright long after midnight, has dimmed to something warmer and less exact. The carriage lamps above and beside the mirror seem lower than before, though perhaps it is only that your gaze no longer lifts to meet them directly. The room has settled into amber, cream, polished walnut, white porcelain, brass made dull by softened light, and the recurrent silver of the jug moving in his hand. Outside remains only distance. If there is moonlight at the edge of the curtain in the passageway, you do not need it now to tell you where you are. France, Italy, some dark interval between one and the other. It no longer matters in the way it did when you were standing in the corridor with one hand near the paneling. The crossing continues whether you attend to it or not. At last, the water has reached every part of you that meant to keep itself slightly apart. He lets the final pour run longer through the ends, and you hear the note of the basin deepen as more water gathers there before slipping away. His hand steadies the hair near the forehead, so the stream does not fall too quickly. Then the jug lifts. The water ceases. For a moment, only the train remains, carrying its measured nocturnal rhythm under the washroom floor. That pause is as soothing as the pouring has been. In the aftermath of warmth, you can feel where it has passed. The scalp is fully wet now, evenly so. No cool islands left near the temples or crown. The towel at your nape has grown pleasantly heavier, doing its work without chill. A thumb checks near the hairline, not to disturb, only to confirm what touch already suggests. The preparation is complete. You do not brace when you hear the jug filled again. Instead, you wait for the next warmth, with the same unthinking trust with which you had let your head rest back into the rolled linen. And when it comes, you receive it as though it had already been on its way to you for some time. Chapter 5. Lather, Rinse, and the carriage's quiet understanding. The next rinse comes in a narrow stream, and then another, each pour placed with the same exactness as before, until the last of the first wetting has passed through your hair and into the basin below. You feel the water travel in clear paths over the scalp, then gather weight through the lengths before slipping away. The rolled linen at your nape keeps its shape beneath you, supporting the neck so completely that you do not need to adjust yourself at all. The brass lip of the basin has kept a little of its heat. Your shoulders, under their shield of folded cloth, no longer carry the slight, lifted readiness that travel had put there earlier in the night. Without deciding to, you let more of your weight rest where it already is. His hands return, not with haste, and not with any pressure beyond what the work asks for. A little soap is taken up and worked first between his palms, so that what reaches you is already warmed and thinned. Then he works the lather in gently. His fingertips travel in short circles that barely shift the skin, then smooth outward, following the direction the water has already taught the strands to take. The scent rises only when the warmth stirs it. Soap first, plain and faintly creamy, and beneath it, the cupboard trace of cologne that has settled into the linen on the heated press. It is not perfume. It belongs to pressed towels, polished walnut, steam, and the kind of order that has been repeated so many nights it no longer needs to announce itself. In the mirror, if you were to open your eyes fully and look, you would see only fragments. Amber light on the beveled edge, the shine of the jug set aside for the moment, his sleeve moving once and then becoming still again. But you do not need the mirror now. The work tells you what is happening more clearly than sight would. The train continues under all of this with its regular midnight cadence, iron and distance translated through carpet, paneling, porcelain. Somewhere farther down the car, a door settles into its frame with a padded, well-bred sound, more felt in the pattern of the carriage than heard outright. And the washroom door seems to answer by resting more firmly on its latch. Then that too is gone, absorbed into the onward motion. Beyond the washroom, beyond the blue runner in the passageway, beyond the heavy cream curtain drawn over the window, there is still a route being kept. The crossing is happening, but it has moved to the edge of relevance. His fingers gather the lather through the lengths with the same restraint, drawing it downward rather than piling it up. The natural tendency is always to rub more than is needed, to make a performance of cleansing. But nothing here is overdone. He separates one section from another, works the foam through, then reunites them, so that no part of your hair is left neglected, and no part is fussed over. Each movement has an economy that is more restful to receive than any display of care could be. You begin to understand that the luxury is that nothing is overdone. Enough water, enough warmth, enough soap, enough touch. When his hand steadies at your forehead and the first rinse after lather begins, your body does not brace. The silver jug has been filled again from the warmed ewer, tested at the inner wrist as before, and brought into place without a break in the sequence. The water lands at the hairline and opens the foam at once, carrying it back in a pale stream. It threads along the scalp, then deepens through the thickness of your hair, and you feel the weight of it increase for a second before it falls away into the basin. By now, you trust the process. He pours in long passes from crown to ends, each one complete in itself, and your body receives them without question. Between pours, there is a pause just long enough for the runoff to finish, for the basin to receive it, for your breathing to settle another fraction lower. The amber light seems softer now. The brass no longer catches with such a bright edge. The lacquered panels take on more depth than shine. Even the beveled mirror stops offering separate surfaces and becomes merely part of the room's enclosure. You do not think the carriage has changed for you in any dramatic sense. It is more that your breathing has found a pace, and the light, the sway, the water, all seem to come into step with it. As the lather thins and clears, the sound changes almost imperceptibly. At first, there is the faint slickness of soap moving underwater, the subdued slip of coated strands passing over one another, then less of that, and more of the clean run of water itself. He knows by touch where to pour next, but you begin to know it too, a second before the warmth reaches you. The crown once more, then behind one ear, then the other side, then down through the back where the hair lies heaviest. You're not waiting in any tense way. You are simply able to receive each next thing because the order has proved itself. Outside the washroom door, someone passes once along the corridor, their steps taken by the runner until they are no more than a change in the air of the carriage. The brass latch gives the faintest answering tick in its housing, then settles. Nothing interrupts. Stations may be passing without your witness. Signals observed by others. Borders crossed under moonlight, while curtains remain drawn. The silver seam at the passage window would still be there if you went to look, but you do not. They can remain unknown for a while longer. His fingers return briefly to the scalp, not to lather again, but to make certain that no trace remains near the roots. The motion is lighter now, almost only a combing of fingertips through wet hair. Then more water follows. You can feel when the coated silkiness gives way beneath his hand to that cleaner slip he has been working toward. The strands separating more readily. No residue left to thicken them. It is a modest sensation, but exact. Here, one of those layers is being removed with complete attention, and no demand that you assist. You become aware of your own breathing because it has lengthened, not because you have tried to lengthen it. The inhale arrives with the warm scent of soap and linen. The exhale leaves in time with the runoff into the basin. And on one slow release, the carriage sways as the next pour begins. After that, the rhythm begins to feel shared by the room itself. Pour, release. A few seconds of water draining away. Hand at the hairline. Hand beneath the weight of your hair. The carriage moving under all of it in a patient side-to-side measure. It is simply that nothing is out of time with anything else. A final pass from the jug travels from the crown all the way through to the ends, slower than the others, as though to gather whatever remains and bring it fully clear. He pauses, and the basin answers with the last thin streaming sound. In that pause, the train's nocturnal hum comes forward, the deep, padded rush beneath the wheels, a faint, upholstered creak from somewhere beyond the washroom wall, the tiny settling sounds of wood and brass moving through colder air outside than in. The heavy curtain in the passageway keeps the night where it belongs, but a line of moonlight at its edge still marks that another world is running alongside this one, silver and remote. Then his hand smooths once over the hair at the crown, checking not by sight, but by feel. Another brief pour follows where he has found the need for it. No more than that. You realize how completely he has avoided making you think ahead. There has been no need to wonder what comes next, or whether enough has been done. Each part of the washing has arrived in its proper place, and because of that, your thoughts have grown less verbal, less interested in sequence. You are still awake, but in a narrower, kinder way. Your attention has drawn inward to warmth on the scalp, the easy support under the neck, the slight damp coolness that appears for an instant before the next pour resolves it. When the jug is set down again, it meets the basin ledge with a controlled silver note, quickly absorbed by cloth and steam. He gathers your hair once more in both hands, encouraging the water downward, not squeezing hard, only guiding its path. The lamps continue in their low amber register. Their shades leave the upper corners of the washroom in a duskier tone than before. And whether the bulbs have softened or your eyes have, it no longer matters. The room has reduced itself to what is useful: water, hands, linen, light, the polished curve of porcelain beneath. You feel, with a kind of mild surprise, that the journey has receded almost completely. In their place is this shorter knowledge. Your hair is clean under his hands. The water remains warm. The train is carrying you onward, whether or not you attend to the miles. That permission is given without statement. It is built into the steadiness of the rinsing, into the way the carriage keeps its balance, into the fact that even the small sounds beyond the door arrive already subdued. For a little while longer, the water continues, each pass lighter than the last, as though what remains to be done now is less cleansing than settling. Your head rests back into the rolled towel. The basin receives the final threads of runoff. Down the car, something wooden gives a tiny nighttime click as the train rounds into another stretch of track. And then the cadence smooths again. Beneath the amber lamp, beneath the drawn curtain, you are carried deeper into the measured hush of the crossing. Chapter 6. The sound of the brush changing. For a few breaths after the last rinse, water threads from the ends of your hair into the basin in thinner and thinner lines, and the brass lip keeps a trace of warmth where the runoff passes. The jug is lowered from above you with the same measured care with which it was raised, its silver side giving back a dim, amber reflection of lamp and paneling. You hear it set down near the ewer with a restrained little note of metal meeting enamel. Then the faint shift of cloth as his hand reaches for what comes next. He checks for any dampness left. You are glad, though perhaps too drowsy to name it fully, that the care does not stop all at once. After water, there will be brushing again. And after brushing, something more. And this continuation matters. It keeps you from having to gather yourself too quickly, from having to leave one state and enter another by any abrupt edge. The train goes on beneath you in its even midnight measure, and you feel how much easier it is to let one skilled sequence follow another than to decide when enough has been done. A cloth is lifted and wrung out over the basin. The sound is low and particular, damp linen tightening in the hands, then the brief patter of what it releases. You hear the twist, the small return of the fabric as it slackens, and then another, shorter turn to take the last excess from it. He uses it first at the hairline, not to dry, only to gather what might otherwise run where it need not. The touch is brief at the forehead, then near one temple, then the other. Each contact exact and untroubling, like the correction of a fold. When the comb returns, it is the dressing comb from earlier, familiar now by the pace it sets. Earlier, it had to work through pins and dust. Before, too, each pass had a faint business in it, a necessary negotiation with what had been arranged and worn. Now it enters clean, damp hair and finds a different task entirely. The first pass begins at the ends, as before, but the sound has changed from those earlier dry passages and from the heavier wetness of rinsing. There is still a little resistance there, only the natural gathering of wet strands seeking one another. And then the teeth pass through, and the section loosens with hardly any pull at all. A portion is lifted. The comb goes through the lower length. It returns slightly higher, then higher again, never forcing a path, only making one. His free hand supports the section before the comb reaches it, so that no weight drags at your scalp. This was true when your hair was dry. Now it matters even more, and you notice it in the absence of any need to brace. The roots are not asked to bear what the hand can bear instead. The train gives one long lateral sway, the kind that arrives over points or a broad curve, and your shoulder settles a fraction against the linen protecting your collar. Nothing in his rhythm alters. That steadiness is part of what lets you sink further. The carriage may move under every object in the room: the basin, the jug, the brush, your own resting head. But his timing has already made room for that. You do not have to adapt before each touch. He has already adjusted for the train's movement. A few more passes with the comb, and then the brush is taken up. You know it now by its sound before it reaches you. The low, dry murmur of natural bristle moving through hair that is no longer rinsing wet, not yet dry, but clean and ordered. At first, there is a softened drag, a damp resistance that is neither unpleasant nor effortful, only present. It is not the faint, crisp whisper the brush made earlier in dry hair, nor the padded hush that belonged to water and lather, but something between, heavier than finished hair, lighter than rinsing. The brush begins at the ends as the comb did, drawing them together into a smoother fall, then moves upward in small increments, returning over the same ground until that first faint drag lessens. This is what he is listening for, not merely whether the brush can pass, but how it passes. Earlier, the sound was fuller, padded by water and soap, and the slight coating left by lather before the final clear rinses. Earlier still, in dry hair, there had been a finer, brisker whisper, separate strands answering distinctly. Now, each stroke grows cleaner, less hush from moisture gathered unevenly between strands, less catch where one section still clings to another. The bristles begin to travel with a quieter glide. You find yourself listening with him, though without effort, not counting strokes, not anticipating the end, only noticing the way one sound gives way to the next. Brush through the lower lengths. Return. Brush again. The rail cadence under the floor joins it without competing. A muted pattern beneath a nearer one. Somewhere beyond the washroom door, in the blue carpeted corridor, a footstep passes and is absorbed almost at once. Then there is only the familiar undersong of wheels and the brush making another patient path through your hair. The amber lamp above the mirror seems lower than before, or perhaps your eyes have simply ceased to ask much of it. Bright edges have gone out of the room. The beveled glass gives back only softened shapes. The pale oval of basin, the dark gloss of walnut, the movement of a sleeve, the brief lift of the brush. You no longer feel arranged within a train crossing some particular country. France, Italy, the unnamed miles between them. Those have receded into the same distance as station clocks, and borders. What remains immediate is the nape supported by rolled linen, the warmth still held in porcelain, the weight of damp hair being gathered and smoothed. He changes hands for a moment, or changes angle. You can tell by the direction of the stroke. One side is brushed away from the face and then drawn back into alignment with the rest. The comb returns for a narrower section near the temple, where finer strands need a slimmer tool. And then the brush follows over it once, lightly, to settle it among the others. No section is left half done. No area is hurried because it is less visible. The same exactness extends to the smallest places. And this, too, lets you rest more deeply. Care that reaches the edges removes the last reason to remain watchful. Another cloth is taken up, or perhaps the same one folded to a drier quarter. You hear the subtle difference in the fabric as it touches the ends, blotting rather than wiping. He gathers a length into the linen and presses, then releases, then moves lower where more moisture has collected. The basin receives a few delayed drops. A hand smooths once from mid-length to end, checking not only order but temperature. And then the cloth is laid aside. Again, the brush. By now, the sound has become finer. The first muted resistance has thinned into something close to silk drawn over paper, then thinner still. Not silence, never quite that, because bristle against hair must always make some answer, but a more even answer, one without little catches inside it. Then, on a stroke from just below the crown through to the ends, both of you hear it. The last padded note falls away midway through the pass, and what continues is a single, uninterrupted glide. His hand does not pause, yet something in it acknowledges the change. Your own body recognizes it at once. Not whether the brush can manage the hair, but whether anything remains now, except a little hidden coolness in the places touch must test. Hair can look arranged before it is fully settled. It can appear nearly dry at one surface, while coolness remains hidden beneath. But sound reveals it. His fingers come there now, just where the rolled towel has been supporting you all along. He does not need to search. 2 fingertips rest lightly under the lower hairline, feeling for any remaining chill where water likes to hide longest. The touch is brief, but unmissable. You are aware of your own skin in that place, of how quickly the body recognizes warmth and coolness at the back of the neck, how old a reflex it is. There is almost no coolness left. The towel has done its work. The rinses were patient enough. The room itself has kept its tempered air. Still, he checks, because almost is not the same as done. The brush resumes after that touch, with even less interruption than a breath. Crown to mid-length now, then from one side, then the other. Each stroke finishing where the previous one began, so that the whole length is included without haste. The bristles distribute what moisture remains, leaving no section wetter than its neighbor. You feel the hair settling not into a style, not anything arranged for display, but into simple readiness to rest. Your hair is clean, untangled, and warm enough to rest. The jug is moved once more, not to pour, but to clear space, and gives a small, shining shift in your peripheral vision. Beside it, the wrung cloth lies in a neat fold, no longer dripping. A cupboard door somewhere behind him closes with that padded, practiced click you have come to recognize. Never sharp, never breaking the room into before and after. One thing put away, another still in use. Nothing vanishes before its part is complete. You notice, too, that the brushing feels different now. Earlier, each touch registered distinctly at the skin, a map of separate paths. Now the sensation spreads and broadens. The body does not wake to each stroke. It receives them and lets them pass through. Your jaw has unfastened without instruction. The place between your shoulders, which travel tends to draw upward and hold there, has lowered by degrees against the linen. Even your hands, wherever they have come to rest, no longer seem to belong to any task. He draws the comb once more through the ends, checking what the brush has already told him. The teeth pass without pause. Then the brush follows. And now the sound is unmistakably the one he has been waiting for. Not damped resistance, not the thicker hush of earlier stages, not even that intermediate softened drag, but the quieter glide that means the strands are clean, parted, and nearly free of excess moisture. He does not announce it. There is no need. You hear it yourself in the altered texture of the stroke, in the way the bristles travel and return. For a little while, he continues even after that, because completion in such hands is not abrupt. A few finishing passes are given simply because they feel good, because they settle the hair where it lies, because the body has not objected, and the night is still carrying you onward. The train keeps its low, regular motion. The amber light remains steady on the walnut panels and the rim of the basin. The curtain in the passageway beyond the door stays drawn over the unseen glass, with only that narrow silver seam at its edge to suggest moonlight moving beside you. At last, the strokes grow lighter, more spaced, almost weightless at the ends. One hand gathers the lengths together and lets them fall in a smooth, damp line. The other rests again at the nape for the briefest final check, finding there not chill now, but only skin warmed by towel and room and touch. The brush is lowered, not set aside far away, only lowered, as if it might yet be needed for one more pass, if the hair itself requested it. But nothing requests anything. The basin gives back a faint warmth. The cloth has stopped dripping. Beneath the hush of the carriage, the changed sound of the brushing lingers, and with it, the quiet certainty that very little now is left to do. Chapter 7. Warm linen at the nape. For a few breaths, nothing changes. The brush has been lowered. The comb no longer moves. And yet, the care continues in smaller gestures. Damp hair rests against the linen at your shoulders. The basin still gives up its stored warmth in a narrow band along the brass lip. Underneath, the train continues with that low, regular passage you have stopped measuring. Almost everything has been answered now, except one small thing. The nape, where dampness lingers longest. You do not need the next step named. You feel it before it arrives, in the way his hand returns once more to the nape. Not searching now, only confirming what the earlier touch already knew. Then the cupboard opens. It is a small sound in this little room, wood releasing from wood. And after it, a faint change in the air as warmer linen is lifted from the press. The trace that comes with it is barely fragrance at all. A faint trace of cologne lingers in the warm towel. A dryness of citrus and herb reduced by steam and cotton and walnut until it is only a brightness at the edge of warmth. You notice it because everything else has grown so simple. Damp hair, warmed porcelain, your own breathing, the carriage underfoot. And because, now that the last coolness has been named by touch, you find yourself waiting for its answer. The cupboard door closes again with its padded click. By then, the towel is already in his hands, unfolded from its roll, then folded again with the same practical neatness that has marked every part of the night. The monogram is there somewhere in the linen, pressed into the cloth in white on white relief, though you do not look for it. You feel the towel first as weight, then heat. Not hot, not startling, only the dense, stored warmth of thick cotton that has been waiting on the rail long enough to take in the press and keep it. One hand supports beneath your damp lengths. The other brings the folded towel to the nape. The contact is exact. It lands where the last possibility of coolness might hide, in that tender place where wet hair and skin can keep a chill longer than you realize. The warmth settles in, first against the surface, then through the damp roots, then lower into the skin beneath. Your neck gives a little, not from effort, but from release, as if some tiny brace there had remained unnoticed until this, and is only now admitting itself. You do not have to hold your head up so carefully anymore. The towel supports your head, broad and firm against the base of the skull. The cloth rolled just enough to make a resting place. He leaves it there for a moment, not blotting yet, not moving, just letting the heat travel through the dampness at the roots and into the skin beneath. You feel how much comfort can live in one square of linen when it is prepared at the right time and brought to the right place. The train sways through a longer curve, and the train's sway feels gentler with the towel supporting your neck. When he begins to move the towel, the movement is patient and economical. A press, then a lift. A turn to a drier fold. Another press. No rubbing. No roughness raised for the sake of finishing quickly. The cotton drinks what remains at the hairline and just below it. At your temples, a corner touches lightly, gathering the last cool beads left by rinsing. Along the back of the neck, the cloth settles again, and you feel the difference between being wet and being merely damp, then between damp and almost dry. A few strands cling briefly to the side of your throat before being collected away. His fingers are practiced enough that the gesture barely separates itself from the towel's work. The lengths are guided over one shoulder, then centered again, then divided so the cloth can reach beneath them. Once, before the towel goes under the hair again, his hand pauses lightly at your shoulder, not holding, only resting there for the span of a breath, as if taking your measure from the way you have settled. Then he continues. Your shoulders, under their protective linen, sink another degree. At some point, you had still been assisting, however slightly, keeping your chin arranged, your neck attentive, your spine politely upright for the sake of the process. The warmed towel eases even that. You discover you can let more of your weight give over without anything slipping out of order. The amber lamp above the mirror seems lower than before. Or perhaps your eyes have softened enough that the edges of the room no longer insist on themselves. Walnut paneling darkens toward honey and brown. Brass keeps only a muted line of reflection. In the beveled mirror, you are less a figure than a nearness of pale towel, dark damp hair, and lamplight gathered in glass. The washroom has narrowed to touch and temperature. Even the silver jug, set near the ewer, catches light without asking to be noticed. He changes the fold again. The towel opens wider this time, one end laid across your upper shoulders, the warmer middle brought once more to the nape. The cloth has weight when it is heated, a settled heaviness different from a blanket, and much more exact. It conforms to the small hollows where neck meets shoulder, where the top of the spine rises gently beneath skin. You feel the heat spread there, then lessen as the linen takes up what moisture remains. He knows the moment by touch. You know it by the way the warmth stops feeling separate from you. Somewhere beyond the washroom door, a footstep passes over the blue runner and is almost completely absorbed. A latch farther down the corridor meets its frame with a subdued metal note. Then only the rail cadence again, and the faint interior sounds of finishing. Cloth turning in careful hands, a drip finally falling from the end of a lock into the basin, the slight creak of the carriage settling back from its sway. This is the part you rarely think to want. The washing itself can be imagined in advance. Warm water, soap, rinsing, the relief of having the day removed. But this answering of the last small coolness, this insistence that even what is nearly comfortable may be made fully so, comes from someone who knows not to stop too soon. It reaches you more deeply because it asks nothing from your attention. You only feel the result. The towel travels down the lengths in sections now. He gathers the hair loosely in one hand and encloses part of it in linen with the other. pressing from near the roots toward the ends. Then again with the drier portion of cloth. The movement is not unlike the earlier brushing in its orderliness, but heavier, slower, more about absorption than arrangement. Dampness leaves strand by strand. The hair no longer cools your back through the protective linen. It rests there with a different temperature, nearer the room, nearer your skin. At intervals, the towel returns to the nape, as if that place remains the truest measure. A brief press, then a final check with the backs of his fingers, where the hairline begins. You can tell from the unhurried certainty of what follows that he finds no chill there now. He leaves the cloth draped for a little while longer. This is no longer active tending in the same way as before, more like being left inside the after-warmth of it. The towel remains around your shoulders and behind your neck, not tight, simply placed. Its heat is gentler now, but broader. The faint cupboard scent has thinned further into clean cotton and steam. Your breathing lengthens against the linen at your chest. The muscles at the base of your skull, which had been making tiny corrections all evening without your noticing, seem finally to understand that they may stop. In the basin, a thread of water slips from the tap and is turned off at once. Perhaps it had only begun to gather from the last use of the handle. Perhaps he had opened it for a moment to warm his fingers before touching your hair again. The sound is so brief, it hardly enters the room before it is gone. He sets the towel's dampened fold away from your skin and turns to a fresh section, preserving the stored heat for one more press. This discretion extends even to linen. Dry where it meets you, damp folded outward. Nothing careless. Your scalp feels clean in a way that is less about soap than about air reaching it again. The roots are no longer coated, no longer carrying the day's dust or the faint residue of travel. At the nape, where the towel rests, the skin is warm and dry. Along your hairline, there is only a delicate coolness from air, not from water. You can feel the distinction clearly because every stronger sensation has already passed. What remains is minute and pleasant. The drag of woven cotton against one strand that has escaped. The smooth inside surface of the shoulder linen. The tempered heat near the collar. The train's motion translated through the soles of your feet and up the back of your calves. He lifts the towel from your neck, but not all at once. First, the pressure lightens. Then the cloth leaves your skin, while still hovering close enough that the warmth does not vanish with it. A final blot at one side of the nape, then the other. Then, beneath the fall of hair, where the shortest strands lie, the towel is folded inward on itself, containing the dampness it has taken, and set aside with a soft, thick sound. For a moment, the air at your neck feels newly bare, and then you realize it is not bare at all. It is simply comfortable. No cool patch remains to draw your attention back. No droplet works its way downward. Your hair clean and nearly dry. Your skin warmed through. your shoulders no longer preparing themselves for the next instruction. The lamp keeps its amber circle over the mirror and basin. The polished wood reflects it dully. From somewhere beyond the curtain in the passageway, moonlight must still be running along the glass in a narrow silver seam, though you do not need to see it to know the train is moving steadily on. Inside this little room, the work is done, and the comfort remains. The warmth still gathered at the nape, the loosened weight of your own body, the quiet order of the room continuing around you. Supported by what has just been done, you remain exactly where you are, while the low hum of the crossing continues underneath and carries on through the dark. Chapter 8. While the train goes on, nothing more is required of the washing. The last of the dampness has been pressed away where it mattered, and what remains is only the pleasant weight of hair nearly dry, arranged so that no strand lies cold against your neck. No chill at the nape, no need to lift a shoulder, no small instinct to reach up and check for yourself. The towel that had rested there is eased back by a few inches, then returned once, briefly, with one final measured press, as if to confirm what his fingers already know. Then even that becomes afterheat. The attendant does not announce that he is finished. He has never needed to tell you what each stage is called. He has let each step finish before starting the next. Now, the monogrammed towel is turned to a dry fold and laid for a moment across your shoulders. Not to dry anything further, only to leave a stable warmth there while he gathers what has been used. You hear the light contact of the brush being set down beside the comb. The silver jug meets the basin's edge with a restrained click, metal against porcelain, then is lifted again and placed more exactly, where it will not shift with the train's motion. That small correction pleases you, not because it matters greatly, but because it means you do not have to think of such things. The room has been restored almost before you notice it had been in use. In the mirror, the amber lamp above gives back a softened image of wood, brass, and your own outline, less distinct now that your eyes are heavy. The beveled edge catches a narrow line of light and lets it fade toward the corners. But you do not need proof. You can feel the result more clearly than you could inspect it. Behind you, or perhaps only beyond the paneling and the corridor wall, the train continues with its low-running steadiness. Not a dramatic rush, only that regular undersound that has been present all along. Rail answering wheel, wheel answering rail, in a pattern too even to count for long. Once, farther away, a compartment door finds its frame with a padded little thud. Then the car resumes its own more constant sounds. The minute complaint of fittings meeting the sway, the upholstered hush of distance, the floor beneath you bearing weight and motion together. The lamp seems lower than before. Perhaps it is only that your pupils have widened in the amber room, or that your breathing has slowed enough for brightness to feel less necessary. Either way, the light no longer reaches as far into the upper corners. It keeps to the basin, the mirror, the brass latch, the folded towel, and leaves the rest of the washroom in a gentler dimness. The polished walnut gives back a dull glow rather than a shine. The brass lip of the basin still holds a little warmth when your hand drifts near it, though not enough now to call your attention for long. The attendant lifts the linen from your shoulders with the same care with which he first placed it there, drawing it away so gradually that the air touching your collar does not feel abrupt. Your skin notices the change, then settles at once. Another towel, drier and lighter, passes once over the ends of your hair where they rest nearest the fabric at your back. Not rubbing, only a final blot, reducing the last trace of moisture that might cool later. His hand supports the lengths while he does it, so no pull reaches the scalp. You have come to recognize this as his particular skill. Each contact arrives complete, already adjusted for comfort. A cupboard door closes with that padded click you heard earlier in the night. And because it sounds the same now as it did then, time in this little room loosens further. The washing began, continued, and has nearly disappeared into the train's onward motion without dividing the night into before and after. Beyond the washroom, the train is still moving. There are miles under the wheels. There may be France behind you, or Italy ahead, or some unmarked distance between one border and the next. But here those facts have lost their edges. They are no more demanding than the silver seam of moonlight beyond the corridor curtain, present without needing witness. You picture the corridor for a moment without opening the door. The heavy cream curtain drawn across the passageway window. The narrow brightness at its edge, where moonlight slips between cloth and frame. The deep blue runner below, taking in any footstep that crosses it. You were there not long ago, still carrying the fine readiness of travel in your shoulders and hands. It is not far to go back. Only a latch, a threshold, a few paces. Yet even that small return does not need to happen immediately. The corridor comes to mind, but you do not feel ready to return to it. The attendant seems to understand this, not by magic, but by long practice. He does not begin tidying in a way that would hurry you. He leaves the brush where it has been set, leaves the comb within reach, leaves the lamp as it is. He adjusts only what would trouble rest if left unattended. A corner of towel is straightened. The porcelain dish with your pins is moved slightly farther from the basin's edge. The ewer is turned so its handle faces outward for the next hand that takes it up, then left there, exact and quiet. Such things are done with economy, and each one is complete in itself. He does not hurry you out. He only makes it easier to remain in it. You notice, too, a longer lateral motion passing through the carriage, broad and untroubled, and your head follows it by a fraction before returning. The movement reaches your shoulders, your ribs, backs of your knees, where they bear some of your weight, and then is gone. There is no need to steady yourself against it now. Earlier in the night, your hand might have gone automatically to the paneling or basin rim. Now, balance seems to happen lower down, almost before you register the change. The body has accepted the rhythm and spends less effort answering it. From the heated press, there remains the faint cupboard scent of linen touched by steam, and the least trace of cologne, so reduced by warmth and cotton that it reads less as fragrance than as order. Soap, too, has become quieter. It no longer rises from your hair in any distinct way. It stays close, clean, and plain, detectable only when you incline your head a little and the warmed air near your temple shifts. The result is not perfume, but a clean, laundered freshness. The attendant's presence begins to recede in the same way, not because he is gone, but because nothing in you is braced to receive the next step. He remains near enough to intervene if needed, far enough not to occupy the room. You hear the restrained movement of cloth being folded once, then again, a brush of sleeve against wood, the brass latch tested with fingertips so it will not sound when used. The pause after, as if to be certain of it. The jug, already placed, is touched once more and left precisely where no sway will trouble it. These are the after gestures of someone who has done this many times in moving cars, in narrow washrooms, for passengers arriving from dinners, from stations, from long hours of reading under compartment lamps, each one carrying some residue of the day that can be removed without discussion. Yet now, the gestures mean something more private. Not departure exactly, but he withdraws without disturbing the calm. If you wished, you could rise and return at once to your compartment. You can almost feel the route already. The washroom door opening inward, the corridors blue under the lamp, the slight difference in air outside this smaller room, cooler and less touched by steam. The runner would receive your step without echo. Your compartment would be waiting in the ordinary sense. Bed turned down, coverlet smooth, the train passing onward under all of it. But the thought remains incomplete, and it is pleasant that it does. You could leave. Nothing prevents it. That is part of the comfort now. No hand keeps you here. No task remains. No instruction follows. Still, you do not want the corridor yet, nor the little practical sequence of latch, step, curtain, bed. Instead, you stay a little longer in the amber circle, not deciding, simply continuing to be where the last care has left you. Your scalp feels light and freshly aired. At the roots, there is that clean lift that comes only after thorough rinsing, when the hair no longer carries the coated feel of soap, but slips separately under comb and fingers. At the nape, warmth remains deep in the skin, a small stored heat from the towel. Across your shoulders, the muscles that had kept some travel posture for hours have dropped enough that the collar lies differently, even your jaw has changed, though you notice it only when your teeth part slightly and stay that way. What remains with you is not the attendant's touch itself, but the ease after it. And that is somehow more intimate. Comfort continuing without needing to be renewed. The lamp seems lower, or your eyes are heavier. The distinction no longer matters much. The mirror blurs first at the edges, then as a whole. Sounds place themselves farther apart. A distant footstep in the corridor is absorbed by the runner before it can become a disturbance. Somewhere beyond the curtain, moonlight continues along the glass as the train rounds whatever curve or crossing lies ahead. The carriage keeps to its measured cadence. Near you, one final movement. The towel is lifted away entirely now, and with it goes the last active part of the tending. Nothing replaces it. Nothing needs to. The air at your neck is warm enough. Your hair has been arranged to fall where it will not cool you. The tools are at rest. The basin gives back only a dim reflection. The latch remains closed. You could open it. You know exactly what waits beyond. But the blue corridor, the turned-down bed, the next small duties of travel, all feel farther away than the narrow distance would suggest. Here, in the space his care has left behind, you are already being carried. The corridor beyond stays muted, bearing the night onward, while you drift deeper into the comfort already made. And the train goes on through the dark, carrying you.